Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, Gym Bros, Big Paul here with you with another Anabolic Q&A. I've got some good ones lined up for you today. We're going to talk about how long you can run a test and Primo cycle. Can you basically do it forever? How to reduce lethargy when you're on GH. What spilling over looks like and why it happens at the end on contest prep. And we have some other questions too. All of these come from the school Anabolic Bodybuilding members site. Folks, if you haven't joined yet, you can join up over there. For $30 a month, I answer everybody's questions directly. It's a easy way to get access to me if you don't want to sign up for coaching. It's super cheap. Like I said, $30 a month, doesn't cost much. You get your questions on the Q&A if you have questions. I have video resources up there too on how to build cycles, insulin, some other stuff, side effect mitigation, and we have a lively chat board where we discuss stuff with each other. All right, enough of that stuff. Let's dig into the Q&A now. All right, first question I've got here is from Mark Swanson from the School Anabolic Bodybuilding members site. Mark asks, any ideas on how to reduce lethargy from GH? I'm running 15 units a day. Well, first thing you could do is to drop down from 15 units to 10. That's a lot. I have tested the limits of GH myself. I've run up to as high as 18 units. I couldn't handle 18 units. It was too much. I don't know how Chase does it. Chase is my friend. I love the man, but I can't run 18 units. I was falling asleep at my desk. I was having to take naps throughout the day. I felt absolutely terrible on 18 units. I backed off to like 9 or 10, and I found like that was sort of my upper limit. Also, when you dose, it makes a difference too. A lot of guys now are splitting up doses throughout the day. What I found is if you split the doses up throughout the day, that yes, you may get to more stable levels of growth hormone throughout the day, but you also are tired throughout the day as well. I like dosing my GH when I am eating a fair amount of carbs, and in the off season, I like taking it all before bed. I notice if I do that I have better glucose control during the day. My blood sugar levels stay more stable, and I do not get the crashes during the day where I'm just tired. It keeps me feeling great during the day, and I have a clear head. The amount that you're taking also plays a role in it too, so find a dose that works for you. A lot of guys will jump straight up to a high dose. I don't like doing that. I would start off like with just 2 to 4 units, titrate up as you need it. And really, if you're not a competitive bodybuilder, there's no compelling reason to probably be taking that much. If you're just trying to be healthy and look good, probably 4 to 5 units is plenty. If you're trying to get massive, then yes, you need to push the doses up a bit. That's not going to happen on 4 or 5 units. If you want to get bigger, you got to go up higher on the doses, is what I've seen with people. But ultimately, it's about what your goals are. Right now, I am not taking any. I have not taken GH in a couple months. I'm taking a break from it while I get my glucose under control. I am a type 1B diabetic, trying to deal with that and get things under control. And I'll be honest with you, I have a lot more energy. I will say this, my sleep kind of sucks since I stopped the GH. This is what I've noticed is I don't sleep as well. I have lost some size. I probably dropped about 8-9 pounds when coming off the GH. That also could be the GLP-1. I'm running retatrutide as well. It's probably the combination of both. So probably lost a few pounds of fat and a few pounds of water. It's probably 50-50 if I were to guess. I will say this. I am not leaning hard like I was at my show at 250. I'm weighing about 240 right now. All right, long story short, find a dose that you can tolerate. Take that dose before bed unless you're dieting. If you're on contest prep or in a dieting phase, then in eating less carbs, you can spread the dose out if you want. I would take it all before bed. And just be chill with it. Do what you need. Don't run the dose up so high if you don't need to run the dose up so high unless you have some goal. And just be intelligent with your GH use. All right. The next question, it's a two-part question here I have from two members, from Alexander Alfonso and also Paul Robinson. Alexander asks, what is the best way to find the amount of carbs needed to peak without spilling over? Is it just testing with high days when you're getting closer? And Paul Robinson said, building on this question, is there any chance you could show pictures of spilled over versus the ideal look? Not sure what you look for. Yeah, and I can show you what that looks like. If you want to see what it looks like, look at Big Ramy from a couple years ago. All right, so first we've got Big Ramy in the 2022 Olympia. That was the one where he famously was spilled over. Now, you can very clearly see the difference between dry and spilled here. You can look at his legs. You can see that his legs are completely washed out. He has loss of vascularity. He also has a washed out abdomen. You can't see any detail in his abdomen. This is not a body fat issue. And I tell my guys when I'm coaching them, you can do a simple pinch test. You can grab area where you usually hold fat, roll it between your fingers, and if you can feel grit there is fat cells present. If not, then it's likely just water retention. I'm not sure what happened, but I can speculate. Generally, when you see guys spilled over, there has been some sort of aggressive carb up that happened where they went too wild with the carb up. Maybe there was some issues with sodium manipulation, and you just end up with water outside of the cell, not inside of the cell. Keep in mind with the sodium potassium pump, that fluid follows sodium, so wherever the salt is, water will be. And a lot of times what I see is guys will try to get too aggressive with the carb up and do all sorts of magic tricks at the end. And they end up just with water spilled over. And then they try to clean that look up with a diuretic. And you get yourself into the situation where you're both soft and small and flat. Because a lot of times when you are dumping water with the diuretic, you got to think about it. You want to pull it from outside of the cell, intracellularly, not, if I can say intracellularly, and not intercellularly. We want the water to stay in the cell. We want to remove the water that's outside of the cell. So a lot of times guys get the water manipulation all botched up, and they eat too many carbs that cause the extra water retention. And keep in mind, there are some other mechanisms that are play here, like there could be hyperaldosteronism when you eat a ton of carbs and use insulin. Insulin's also going to cause additional water retention. It's always a danger when using insulin. There could be inflammation from the type of foods that you're eating that could cause you to be spilled over. It could be a sodium and potassium issue where there's electrolyte imbalances that cause water retention. So it's not just as simple as eating too many carbs. It's what's happening with all the food that you're eating, what your reactions are to it, what aldosterone levels are at. It could be an issue with estrogen that cause that soft, watery, spilled over look. And throwing diuretics at it is not always the answer. When guys are taking insulin to carb up, that signals the kidneys to retain more sodium to force the glycogen synthesis. When glycogen synthesis is topped off, then you end up with a bunch of extracellular water that can cause issues. So a lot of it's just issues with how guys are peaking and dudes throwing Hail Mary passes at the end, trying to get themselves nice and full and doing stuff that they hadn't been doing the whole time. So a lot of times where they fuck up and then they use a diuretic, not understanding how the different diuretics work. Some are potassium sparing, some are not. In making a already complex situation even worse, sometimes dudes just lose their mind. I've had guys at the end of prep that just go out and they think it's a good idea to go out and eat pancakes and scrambled eggs and have a burger and fries because they feel like they're too flat, and they eat some extra food and don't tell the coach about it, and you have a bunch of sodium. And as we mentioned, sodium, so wherever sodium is, water will be, and that's going to be extracellular. I can never say that word right. Extracellular, whatever. You get what I'm saying. But that's an issue that dudes run into. I see it all the time. So probably the best thing to do is just practice what you want to do and look like on your stage. Wait, like a couple weeks out. I have guys doing high carb days throughout their entire contest prep, so we know what they look like coming out of a high carb day. Another issue too, a lot of times guys try to carb up when it's too late. It takes 48 hours or so for glycogen to fully synthesize. So if you're eating a ton of carbs the day before the show, and then you wake up watery the day of the show, that glycogen has not fully synthesized yet. That water may not have pulled into the cell. So that can also cause issues. These are just some other things that you have to consider. There's a lot of variables there. And the more variables you introduce at the end, the more likely you are to screw things up. I see guys backstage pouring honey down their throats and eating, doing all kinds of crazy tricks, witch magic to try to make things better. And they have no idea what the mechanisms are that are at play and why they're even doing these things. They just do it because their fucking coach told them to do it. And the coach has no idea what's going on. And they just end up looking like a bag of wet flour when they get on stage. Really, the simplest way to do it is just do what you've been doing the entire time. Have a little bit of water manipulation at the end. Some guys use diuretics. If you understand what you're doing with the diuretic and how your body's going to react to it. But keep in mind, with diuretics, a lot of times you end up with water rebound afterwards. And if you go considerably flat using a diuretic, then there's really not much you can do to recover from it other than wait a few days or weeks sometimes. And it takes, 24, 36, 48 hours for aldosterone to regulate when you make these changes sometimes. Same thing with glycogen synthesis. We're talking about 2 days for glycogen to fully synthesize. So these are other considerations that guys don't think about when they're peaking for a show. And ideally, if we practice the high days like I do with my guys on the high carb cycling, a lot of times what I'll do is when I go into peak, guys, I'll just run the carbs a little bit lower than what we've been doing on the high days. Usually guys look best 2 days after their high day. It's not the day after. Usually you look watery after. We know if we pull a little bit of water out that we're going to dry you out a little bit more because there's going to be diuresis. If we don't get crazy and start changing electrolyte intake the last week, that's another variable that we're closing up that we are going to make mistakes. If we keep all foods out of your diet on that peak week that could potentially cause any sort of inflammation, like don't go and do something stupid and eat something you haven't eaten your entire contest prep. Cut out all things that have potential high FODMAP response. Keep the food volume a little lower the last day so you don't have inflammation, so you don't have distension in your gut, so you don't retain fluids. Keep the stress low. Cortisol can affect things too. There's a million different things, so we just keep shit simple. See what your body looks like, how you are responding at the end. All right, next question we got here is from Hassan Daramzi. I think I'm saying that correct. I apologize, Hassan, if I slaughtered your name here. Hello, Paul. What would be the best way to use Clen if someone has anxiety or panic disorder from PTSD? Would you start with a low dose, such as 20 micrograms, or even a smaller dose and building up to be a more suitable option? Or one should try salbutamol at 2 milligrams or considering its half-life? Would the end result from either be the same or would it differ? Also, Clen is preferred choice for most. Then can anti-anxiety meds be used alongside of the Clen, such as benzo to calm the CNS or hyperadrenaline and boost the body? Lastly, by using the benzo alongside it, could it affect the Clen in any way? I never like using more drugs to deal with the side effects from other drugs. It's a last resort. It's a last resort. In the whole polypharmacy approach kind of worries me with guys sometimes. You got to keep in mind that Clen is a selective beta-2 agonist. Clen is just going to act on the beta-2 receptor selectively. You'll hear that. That doesn't mean that it doesn't have some effect on the beta-1 and beta-3. It will have some effect on the beta-1 and beta-3. Clen is going to drive CNS stimulation, which can increase nervousness, anxiety, pulse, things like that. I have heard of guys using a beta blocker, specifically nebivolol, which is a beta-1. It blocks the beta-1 receptor. while Clen doesn't have a strong action on the beta 1 receptor, that may lower pulse. That may help with some other things, is increased pulse and increased blood pressure, potential heart effects that happen with Clen. It probably won't help much with anxiety. You could use something that's non-selective, like propranolol. I believe it's non-selective. That may help, but then also that may block the fat burning effects of the clenbuterol. Now, here's another thought, and something that I have played around with this year, and I know some other guys like Vigorous Steve are talking about. Just stay away from the stimulants if they bother you. There are other options. GH is a very potent fat burner. You could use something like SLU-PP332. You could use a GLP-1. You could potentially use methylene blue. Anything that's going to increase mitochondrial function could potentially help. Or just use, good old-fashioned hard work. Cardio works too. Now, with that said, I do like clenbuterol. I think to me, it's the best fat burner there is. I've never found anything that is better than clenbuterol, at least for me, for burning fat. But I do have a bit of anxiety, social anxiety. I do have I've been told I have a mild heart arrhythmia, although my most recent cardiologist says, no, that's not true. I don't have a heart arrhythmia. But regardless, I don't like the cardiovascular impacts of clenbuterol. If you're going to run it, just run low doses. I've heard of guys running like 200 micrograms and crazy shit like that. I don't think I ever went over 60 on my entire contest prep last year. And then I lowered it down towards the end. It was plenty for me to get lean. Now, I do get lean easier than most people. But also, if you don't let yourself get super fat in your off season, it should be easier to get in shape once you get on stage. So just make sure you're lean going into your contest prep. You won't have to use all these things. If stimulants make you more anxious, then stay away from stimulants or limit your exposure to it. I've heard of guys using inhalers like albuterol or salbuterol, whatever the other one's name. I probably slaughtered that name. They have shorter half-lives, I think like the albuterol is just a few hours. So you could take a couple puffs throughout the day and potentially get some of the effect that you're getting from clenbuterol. Clenbuterol has a longer half-life. I think it's around 36 hours, something like that, roughly speaking. So it's going to be with you for a longer. That could be an option to get it in the first half of the day and then let your CNS and your brain have a break at night. But ultimately, I think if a drug causes you side effects, you shouldn't be using other drugs to mitigate those side effects. Just don't use that drug. Look for a solution that you can tolerate well. Next question from my buddy Scott Brinkman over at the Anabolic Bodybuilding School members site. Link is in the video description below if you want to go check out the member site. Scott asked, could I stay on 600 Testi and 400 Primo Bowling indefinitely? I feel like I've answered this question before. A lot of people ask this question. If my blood markers look good and continue to grow, or would it be advisable to drop down to TRT at some portion of the year? I know my current cycle is probably considered bodybuilding TRT for a lot of competitors. Yeah. That's I wouldn't say that, but maybe I know some dudes that would consider that a cruise. It's not really a cruise. You're not giving your body a break unless you actually pull down low enough to to actually just get yourself somewhat back into some homeostasis, like at physiological levels of testosterone. High physiological levels, like 200 milligrams to 300 milligrams of testosterone a week is plenty. Now, with that said, myself, I have gone a couple years. Well, I wouldn't say a couple years. I probably have gone 10, 12 months on blast straight before, and I've been okay. I don't know that I would advise that. I know of other bodybuilders that have just stayed on for years straight and have never come down. Never come down. I don't know if that's advisable. I had Dr. Dean on one time, and he's talked about this before, but what the issue is that the higher you push the doses, your body is using all of its resources, all of its stem cell pool for muscle hypertrophy and not for actually repairing and fixing organs and dealing with organ stress and damage. And he thinks that, and this is just speculation, that the long-term effects of that are what cause the decline in organ health that you see in problems with the blood markers over time. Like, you'll see guys that run this stuff for a while and they're fine. Now, once again, in toxicology, it's the dose and duration that creates the toxicity. So dose, compound choice, duration. Those are the three things. So if we're using well-tolerated compounds, we're using those compounds at reasonable doses, and you can probably increase the duration that you normally would run. Potentially, you could go for years at that dose. I don't know why you would do it. I don't know that it's beneficial. I like giving myself breaks every once in a while, and I notice that, there's other mechanisms at play, but things like insulin sensitivity after being in a caloric surplus for a while goes to shit. Gastric emptying sucks. There's all sorts of things that happen when you stay on a bulk for too long, and then just after a while, your body just sort of stops responding, and you need a break. Myostatin increases. mTOR seems to come down. Maybe AMPK increases. I'm just speculating here, but your body does not like to grow. After a while, your body's going to want to go back to homeostasis, and I think you need to give that break. Program in those breaks for your health, and then get yourself ready for your next push. That's what I would do. What I found, guys that just spin their wheels are the dudes that never push high enough with the stuff to actually grow, and never come down low enough to actually let their body heal up. They kind of live in this nether region middle ground, thinking they're going to eke out small gains over a long period of time, and that's going to net out to being a great result. There's certain PED educators that encourage that way of doing things, and I've never seen anybody get huge doing it that way. Eventually, you gotta push the gas pedal down, and if you push the gas pedal down, you need a break from it. You can't do that forever. Your body's going to break if you keep doing that. But the guys that I see that get massive, like IFBB Pro massive, there has always been one or two cycles in their life where they've gotten hyper aggressive. I'm not saying you should do that. Now, if you're just a regular gym bro and you want to look good, hell, why not? You could you'd probably get by with less than that. Like, I think my retirement cycle when I'm done with bodybuilding is probably going to be like 300 tests, 200 Primo, and 4 units of GH. That's what I'll run. I'll do that for 10, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, whatever, however long I feel like it. Get myself cleaned up, looking good, and then I'll come back down to TRT for a few months and then go back on that. And I think that's a process that you could probably repeat and look pretty damn good. Now, you're not going to turn into Mr. Olympia doing that. If that's your goal, you're not going to look like a peak bodybuilder doing that. But once you have the size on, this is what I found too. Once you have accumulated that size, and you'll see it with professionals, you'll see the guys like, oh, I'm only taking 500 milligrams of testosterone. What they forgot to tell you is they took, that 4 or 5 gram cycle for a year and a half when they were putting on that size. Once you get to a certain size, it's not that hard to maintain it. It's pretty easy to maintain it. And you probably could on low doses. I've been able, I've been on pretty much just 200-300 milligrams of testosterone, I would say, out of the last 8 months, 6 out of the last 8 months. I did a small little blast going into the Arnold. I was just running 600 tests and 400 Mass and Primo, nothing crazy. But it's not, I feel like my physique, it's not great. It's not perfect right now, but I feel like I've held up pretty well with training 4 or 5 days a week and, eating a half-ass diet. So once you have that size, it's not that hard to maintain. All right. Hopefully that one was helpful. All right, next question here. Actually, this is a continuation of the previous one. Joe DeMayo, I think I said that correctly. Joe says, building on this question that Scott had, is there a downregulation in androgen receptors in the presence of supraphysiological levels of androgens for a prolonged period of time? The answer to that is no. We know this emphatically. Now, there are study after study after study after study that shows that androgen receptors actually upregulate when exposed to androgens. And the more muscle cells that you have, the more muscle cells that you have, or the bigger muscle cells you have, probably the more androgen receptors you're going to have. You'll see it with guys that are extremely huge. 200 milligrams of testosterone isn't going to do shit anymore. It's not to say that they have built up a tolerance to it. This is just me speculating. I don't have science to back this up, but I would speculate that they have increased androgen receptor density. There's just simply more androgen receptors. A bigger guy is going to have more androgen receptors. Therefore, it's going to take more androgens, steroids, to stimulate those androgen receptors. For me, like 200 milligrams doesn't do shit anymore. And you'll see it with guys that are smaller. They run 300. Hell, I remember 300. I have a bunch of estrogen conversion and DHT conversion and a whole shit ton of side effects. Now I can go up to 750 milligrams of test and I don't even need an AI. My body's completely changed because I'm a bigger dude. I have more androgen receptors. And so that whole notion that there is some sort of downregulation in androgen receptors is just untrue. You can go on Google and Google it, and you can find a million fucking research articles that say it. It just flabbergasts me that guys still think that there's androgen receptors downregulate. They're not like an insulin receptor that's a transmembranal receptor where there's downregulation. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. Anyway, so I would say, look, if you want, there's some other mechanisms going on here that cause guys to stop having hypertrophy. There's probably lessened insulin sensitivity. There's slowed gastric emptying and things I talked about before, increased myostatin. Just fatigue, being sick. After a while, you're running these drugs at high doses for a while. You just made yourself sick and your body's not responding anymore. If your liver health is not great, organ health is not great, you're probably not going to grow that well. And sometimes the body just needs a break. You need to pull back down to TRT. It has nothing to do with androgen receptors. And the reason why you get a bunch of results after coming back down is because you actually let your body heal and get healthy. Has nothing to do with androgen receptors. All right, last question for this one is from Adam Haley. Adam asks, what causes lethargy during a cycle? Is it not erythrocytosis? Is it too much estrogen, liver enzymes? I can't seem to find an answer anywhere. Probably all of the above. Bunch of things. I'll say this. You don't get lethargic on contest prep. And most guys run a shit ton more drugs on contest prep than they do during the off season. So I would speculate that the majority of the lethargy that you feel in the off season is simply from being in a caloric surplus, probably eating too many carbs, body fat starts to get high, probably some bit of insulin resistance that's starting to happen. Your body is not metabolically healthy. I think a lot of times when guys are walking around with high blood sugars all day long, I'm trying to be more meticulous with tracking my blood sugars, but there is definitely a correlation between feeling tired and your blood sugar being high. I think a lot of guys are walking around with high blood sugars from all the food they're eating, from the growth hormone they're taking, and that makes them feel lethargic. When your body fat gets higher, you're going to feel lethargic. Most dudes on contest prep can't sleep. And, probably a result of some of the stimulants and stuff they're on. But I've done diets where I don't take stimulants and my sleep goes down. My need for sleep goes down, which is contradictory to what you think it would be. But that's just how it goes. So I think it's purely a function of increased food, probably insulin sensitivity starting to decline. There's some other metabolic factors that are going on in there. Just, being in a caloric surplus for all this time. And it could be health related too. I mean, if your body is stressed from the drugs, certainly that could play a role in things. High dose growth hormone can do it. So it's not like there's one thing you can point to. It's multifactorial. What I've seen though is if guys start doing some cardio, putting some intermittent fasting in, if guys have a lower calorie day or carb cycle, that they tend not to have these issues when they get towards the end of a bulk as you would if you're just blasting high calories every day. I have been periodically programming in a bit of fasting in my off seasons. I have been periodically keeping, with my clients, I've been having periodic days where we pull the carbs down really low or have zero carb days during, basically a modified protein fast during the off season to allow their body to have a break. And guys report that energy is much better. So if you're in a high insulin state, if you're taking a bunch of growth hormone, if you're eating a bunch of carbs, if you're, taking a bunch of GH and just pounding food all day long, you are definitely going to be tired and lethargic. It is sort of the cost of business of getting bigger. There's only so much you could do to mitigate all of it. My answer has always been to drink more Monsters. That's not the wise answer. Another thing too, a lot of guys have undiagnosed sleep apnea from just getting big. When you get big in the off season, you're probably sleeping like shit. You're choking on your own breath at night and not sleeping well, having high red blood cell count and hemoglobin and hematocrit and blood volume, that all can affect lethargy as well. So it's multifactorial. There's a bunch of things that could be causing it. It's all of these things above it. And some of it is related to the PED, some of it isn't. But I think it's largely related to the carb intake, the calorie surplus, the increased weight, sleep apnea, all of the other downstream effects. It's not directly related to the PEDs themselves. All right, folks, that's all I've got for you on this one. I hope you liked it. I appreciate each and every one of you. Take care. I'll see you next week. You all are awesome. I appreciate all of you. Thank you. For coaching or consultations, head over to www.anabolicbodybuilding.com to book your spot today. I can help you with optimizing hormones, fat loss, muscle gain, physique, athletic performance, nutrition, and health. For more information, shoot me an email at bigp3rd@gmail.com.